Why every crow lives a different life to crows. Same species, same city, same park. One of them knows which garbage trucks come on Tuesdays and positions itself along the route before the truck arrives. It has learned which specific houses put out the best scraps. It knows 3 humans by face, one that feeds it, one that ignores it, one that once threw a shoe at it. It has a mate it has stayed with for 6 years. It knows every hawk territory within 2 miles and the specific flight paths that avoid them. It has a favorite perch it has used for 4 years. And it defends that perch against specific rivals whose individual behavioral patterns it has studied and learned to exploit. The other crow, 50 meters away, knows none of this. It forages differently, socializes differently, takes different risks, has different enemies, has learned different things from different experiences in a different sequence over a different life. They are the same species. They share the same biology. They are subject to the same instincts, the same drives, the same evolutionary programming, and they are living completely different lives. Before this video ends, you are going to understand why. And the answer is going to reach further than crows, into questions about what experience is, what our self is, and what it actually means to have a life rather than simply to be alive. Stay and me. What we got wrong about animal lives for most of the history of biology, the dominant model of animal behavior, was essentially this: same species, same behavior. Animals are expressions of their genetics. Their actions are the output of biological programming. Individual variation exists at the level of physical characteristics, size, coloring, minor morphological differences, but behavior, the thinking went, is fundamentally uniform within a species. A crow is a crow. They all do crow things. The crow you see today and the crow you saw last week are, behaviorally, interchangeable. This model was not stupid. It explained a great deal. And for many species, insects, for instance, or most fish, it is largely accurate. The behavioral repertoire is narrow, instinct-driven, and consistent across individuals. But as researchers began spending serious time with corvids, not just observing them, but following specific individuals over years, tracking their histories, watching their decisions accumulate into patterns, the model began to break down because crows were not interchangeable, not even close. They had personalities, histories, habits specific to them as individuals, strategies and skills that differed from bird to bird, social relationships that shaped their behavior in ways that could not be predicted from their biology alone. They had, in a word that researchers used carefully at first and then with increasing confidence, lives, not just existence, not just the biological execution of survival programs. Actual lives, individual, particular, shaped by experience, marked by choice, different from every other life being lived by every other crow in every other tree. The question is how. And the answer begins with a brain that learns. The learning brain, most animal behavior, is dominated by one of 2 systems. Instinct, hardwired responses that don't require experience to operate, or simple conditioning. Learned associations between stimuli and outcomes that are acquired quickly and are relatively inflexible. Both systems are fast and efficient. A bird that instinctively avoids the silhouette of a hawk doesn't need to have survived a hawk attack to know the danger. A dog that learned that the leash means a walk doesn't need to reason about it every time. These systems work. They have kept countless species alive for millions of years, but they have a limitation. They are not creative. They cannot generate novel solutions to novel problems. They cannot update based on complex social information. They cannot learn from watching. They cannot plan. Crows have those systems too. But they also have something else. A learning architecture that operates more like the one in your own brain than like anything we typically associate with birds. Crows learn by observation, by experimentation, by social transmission. by reasoning about cause and effect, and crucially accumulate what they learn. They reset. They don't lose skills they've acquired. The crow that figured out how to exploit the Tuesday garbage route in 2019 still knows how to do it in 2024. The knowledge compounds. The life builds on itself. And because each crow is in a different place, at different times, observing different things, interacting with different individuals, solving different problems, the lives that build themselves are different, necessarily, irreducibly different. Your crow is not like my crow, and neither of them is like the crow 3 streets over. Personality, I want to use a word now that will make some scientists uncomfortable, and I want to use it deliberately. Crows have personalities. This is not anthropomorphism. This is a documented finding replicated across multiple studies in multiple institutions. The technical term researchers use is consistent individual differences in behavior, meaning that across different situations, different times, and different contexts, individual crows show stable patterns of response that distinguish them from other individuals of the same species. In practical terms, some crows are bold. They approach new objects, new situations, new individuals quickly and without much apparent anxiety. They explore. They take risks. They are the first members of a flock to investigate something strange. Other crows are neofolk, deeply cautious around anything new they hung back. They watch the bold crows investigate first. They take longer to adopt new food sources, new routes, new strategies. They are more consistent and less adventurous. And within those broad categories, there is enormous variation. Some crows are highly social, embedded in large flock networks, constantly interacting, rarely alone. Others are more solitary, forming intense bonds with 1 or 2 individuals and interacting minimally with others. Some are aggressive territorial defenders. Others are remarkably tolerant of sharing space. These are not random fluctuations. They are stable over time. The bold crow is bold next year. The cautious crow is cautious next year. The personality is real. It persists, and it shapes the life. A bold crow and a cautious crow in the same environment will have different lives not because they are in different places, but because they engage with the same place differently. They notice different things, take different risks, build different knowledge, form different relationships. And those differences compound, year after year, into lives that look less and less alike. The knowledge gap here is something that surprised researchers when they first began looking for it. The gap in knowledge between individual crows in the same area can be enormous. Not just different knowledge, vastly different amounts of it. An older, experienced crow in an established territory may have built up a cognitive map and social network of extraordinary complexity. It knows the terrain intimately. It knows dozens of individual humans by face and behavioral history. It knows the seasonal patterns of food availability. It knows which of its neighbors can be trusted, which can be deceived, which should be avoided entirely. A young crow entering the same territory knows almost none of this. It has its instincts, its basic social behaviors, and whatever it managed to learn during its first year. Everything else, the rich, particular, locally specific knowledge that makes an experienced crow so effective at surviving and thriving, has to be built, earned, accumulated over years of living in that specific place with those specific individuals. This knowledge gap has real consequences. Young crows are more vulnerable, not because they are physically weaker, but because they know less. They make worse decisions. They miss opportunities that an experienced crow would catch immediately. They get into conflicts they could have avoided. They fail to exploit resources that are obvious to someone who has been paying attention longer. And here is where it gets interesting. Because this knowledge gap is not just about individual experience, it is also about who you know. The social network crow society is not a flat collective where all individuals have equal access to information. It is a network. And like all networks, it has nodes, individuals who are more connected, more central, more embedded in the flow of information than others. A crow that is well connected, that has relationships with many other individuals, that participates actively in flock life, that is present when discoveries are made and information is shared, has access to knowledge that a more peripheral crow simply does not have. Where the good food is this week, which predator has been hunting in which area, which human to avoid, which territory has recently been vacated and might be claimed. This information moves through crow social networks in ways that researchers are still mapping. Vocal communication plays a role, specific calls that signal food, discovery, danger, the presence of a known enemy, but observation is equally important. A crow that watches another crow's behavior closely can extract information from it, where it's going. What IT found, what it's avoiding. The more connected crow is better informed. The better informed crow makes better decisions. The better decisions compound into better outcomes over a lifetime. And so to crows, starting from the same biological baseline, can end up in completely different positions, different territories, different social networks, different knowledge bases, different life outcomes, simply because of who they happen to be near at critical moments, who they learned from, who took them in. This is not so different from how human lives diverge. The choices here is the part that most surprised me when I spent time with this research. Because everything I've described so far could still, theoretically, be explained without using the word choice. Different environments, different random encounters, different starting points, different outcomes. But crows make choices, real ones, in ways that researchers can distinguish from random variation or simple conditioning. In a long-term study of a crow population in New York, researchers documented individual birds making decisions that could only be described as strategic. One crow, over several years, consistently avoided the most competitive foraging sites places where food was abundant, but where aggressive rivals had established dominance, in favor of less productive sites where it faced no competition. It was leaving resources on the table, choosing a lower reward in exchange for a lower cost. That is not instinct. Instinct would drive it toward the best food source. That is a calculated trade-off. A decision made by an individual that had assessed its own competitive position realistically, accurately, and chosen the strategy that optimized its actual situation rather than the theoretically ideal one. Another crow in the same study did the opposite. It was smaller and lower in the dominance hierarchy but consistently challenged larger rivals at the best food sites. It lost frequently, but it also won sometimes. And over years, it gradually established a foothold in competitive foraging areas that its initial position would not have predicted. Different assessments, different risk tolerances, different strategies, different lives. The question of whether this constitutes genuine decision-making in a philosophically meaningful sense, whether there is something it is like to be that crow, weighing those options, is one that science cannot answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but the behavior looks like choice. It functions like choice. And it produces the kind of individual variation in life outcomes that, in humans, we don't hesitate to attribute to choice. The territory a crow's territory is not just a piece of geography, it is a life's work. An established crow in a long-held territory has spent years, sometimes a decade or more, building knowledge about that specific patch of the world, every food source, every shelter spot, every predator pattern, every human behavior, every rival's weakness, every ally's location. This knowledge is not transferable. It cannot be packed up and moved. It exists in the crow's memory as a dense, layered, experience-built map of a specific place, A map that took years to make, and that makes the crow who holds it exponentially more effective in that territory than any newcomer, regardless of that newcomer's raw ability. This is why crows defend territories so fiercely. They are not defending space. They are defending their knowledge, their investment, the accumulated product of years of paying attention. When a crow loses its territory to a stronger rival, to human development, to some catastrophic event that forces displacement, it does not just lose a place to live. It loses the knowledge infrastructure that made it effective. It becomes, functionally, a young crow again starting over, in a place it doesn't know yet. Some crows recover, build new territories, accumulate new knowledge, start over and build something again. Others don't. There is something in that vulnerability, in the fragility of a life built on knowledge that cannot be transferred, that I find unexpectedly moving. The crow that has lived in the same 3 blocks for 8 years is not just an animal in a habitat. It is a repository of irreplaceable, hard-won, deeply particular information about a small piece of the world. Information that exists nowhere else, that dies with it. Every crow that dies takes a library with it. The matemost crows mate for life. This is not a romantic footnote. It is a cognitive and strategic arrangement of significant consequence. A mated pair of crows that has been together for years has built something together that neither of them could have built alone, a shared knowledge base. Each partner has different experiences, different strengths, different areas of expertise. One may be better at detecting aerial predators. The other may have better knowledge of winter food sources. One may have a more extensive social network on the eastern edge of the territory. The other may have relationships with specific humans that provide reliable food. Together, they are more than the sum of their parts, not in a sentimental sense, in a practical, operational sense. The pair functions as a cognitive unit, each filling gaps in the other's knowledge, each watching angles the other misses, each contributing to a shared territorial intelligence that neither individual could maintain alone. Long-term pairs are more successful by almost every measure, better foraging outcomes, higher nest success rates, greater territorial stability, more effective predator defense. The relationship is not just emotional investment. It is cognitive partnership. And the longer it lasts, the more deeply that partnership is integrated into the structure of both birds' lives. When a long-term mate dies, the surviving crow's behavior changes in ways that go beyond the loss of a companion. It loses half its operational knowledge infrastructure, half its social network, half its early warning system. It becomes, in measurable ways, less effective at being a crow. It also, researchers have noted, often spends significant time in the places where the lost mate was typically present, waiting, in that quiet crow way, for something that is not coming back. The life so. To crows, same species, same city, same park. One of them is 8 years old. It has lived in the same half-mile radius its entire adult life. It knows this territory the way you know your own house in the dark, intimately, completely, without having to think about it. It has a mate it chose 4 years ago after evaluating 3 other candidates and finding them insufficient. It has enemies it has learned to outmaneuver, allies it has learned to trust, and humans it has sorted into categories of threat, neutrality, and usefulness. It has survived to hawk attacks, one particularly bad winter, and a territorial dispute that lasted 2 years. It has a personality, bold, curious, somewhat aggressive at the edges of its territory, unexpectedly tolerant of the small children at the school on the corner that has been consistent since its first year of life and has shaped every significant decision it has ever made. The other crow is 2 years old. It is still learning what this place is, still making mistakes, still building the map. Still figuring out who to trust and who to avoid, and where the food actually is in February when everything is buried under ice. It will take years, if it survives, if it stays, if it finds a partner and a territory and the time and safety to accumulate what the older crow already has. If it lives long enough, it will know this place. It will know it deeply and specifically and irreplaceably. It will have built a life that is entirely its own, shaped by choices it made and experiences it had and relationships it formed and knowledge it earned. And that life will be like no other crow's life that has ever been lived. There is a question I've been building toward this entire video, and eintwint the directly what is all life? Not in the biological sense, a life is a period between birth and death, but in the meaningful sense, a life is something that happened, that accumulated, that became something particular and specific and irreplaceable. The crow that knows its 3-block territory in the dark, that has a mate it chose, that has enemies it has learned, that has a personality that showed up in its first year and has been there every day since. That is carrying, right now, in whatever a crow uses for memory, the entire record of everything it has seen and done and survived and decided. That crow has a life, not a human life. Not a life in the full complexity of what that word means when we apply it to ourselves, but something. Something that is not nothing, something that is not just existence. Something that is specifically and irreducibly its. Every crow in every tree in every city in the world has one. They are all different. And most of us walk past them every day without once wondering what they know.